The rain was relentless, hammering the streets of Seattle like a judgment from above. Eleanor Voss stood under the awning of a shuttered bookstore, her breath fogging in the cold, watching a woman across the street huddle beneath a cardboard sheet. Something about her, those defiant blue eyes maybe, or the way she clutched her backpack like it held her entire life, tore at Eleanor's carefully guarded heart. Eleanor was no stranger to wealth. At 38, she built a tech empire from nothing, her name synonymous with innovation and quiet philanthropy. Her penthouse overlooked Puget Sound. Her wife Margot was a celebrated architect, and their life together was a polished masterpiece of success. Yet, standing there watching this stranger shiver in the rain, Eleanor felt a crack in that perfect facade. She crossed the street before she could talk herself out of it. "Excuse me," Eleanor said, her voice softer than she intended. The woman looked up, her auburn hair plastered to her face, suspicion etched in every line of her expression. She couldn't have been older than 30, but her eyes carried a lifetime of survival. "I'm Eleanor. You look like you could use a hot meal." The woman, Clara, as Eleanor would later learn, snorted, brushing wet strands from her face. "What's the catch, lady? Nobody offers something for nothing." "No catch," Eleanor replied, meeting those fierce blue eyes. "Just human decency." Clara studied her, weighing the offer. Hunger won out. "Fine. But I'm not your charity case." They ended up at a diner 2 blocks away, neon lights buzzing over greasy tables. Clara devoured a burger while Eleanor sipped coffee, asking gentle questions that Clara dodged with practiced ease. She was a runaway, Eleanor pieced together, though the why and how remained locked behind Clara's guarded smiles. There was something magnetic about her, raw, unfiltered, like a flame that refused to gutter out despite the storm. Eleanor didn't know why she kept coming back. Every evening that week, she found herself at that same street corner, bringing coffee, then blankets, then an offer to sleep in her guest room for a night. Clara resisted at first, pride flaring, but exhaustion softened her edges. By the 5th night, she followed Eleanor home. The penthouse was a world apart from the streets, marble floors, floor-to-ceiling windows, the kind of place that screamed money. Clara stood frozen in the foyer, her muddy boots a stark contrast to the pristine surroundings. "This is a mistake," she muttered, gripping her backpack. "It's just a bed," Eleanor said gently. "You're not signing a contract." Margot was away on a conference in Chicago, so the apartment was quiet, save for the hum of the city below. Eleanor showed Clara to the guest room, watching as she hesitated before sinking onto the crisp white sheets. "One night," Clara said, more to herself than Eleanor. "Then I'm gone." But one night became 2, then 3. Clara's sharp edges softened as she showered, ate, and slept without fear of being woken by rain or worse. Eleanor found herself lingering in the kitchen, drawn to Clara's stories. Fragmented tales of a childhood in foster care, a love for painting she'd abandoned years ago, a life derailed by choices she wouldn't explain. Eleanor listened, captivated, her heart stirring in ways she hadn't felt in years. When Margot returned, the air shifted. She was 40, elegant and precise, her blonde hair always perfect, her green eyes sharp enough to cut. She stood in the living room, arms crossed, staring at Clara, who sat on the couch in borrowed clothes, looking like she'd been caught trespassing. "Who is this?" Margot's voice was ice. "Clara," Eleanor said, stepping forward. She needed a place to stay. "It's temporary." "Temporary." Margot's gaze flicked to Clara, then back to Eleanor. "You brought a stranger into our home without asking me?" Clara stood, her jaw tight. "I'll go. I don't need this drama." "No," Eleanor said, too quickly, her hand reaching out instinctively. "You're not going back to the streets." Margot's eyes narrowed. "Eleanor, we need to talk. Now." In their bedroom, Margot didn't hold back. "What are you doing? Playing savior to some homeless girl? This isn't a shelter, Eleanor. This is our life." "She's not just some girl," Eleanor snapped, surprising herself. She's been through hell, Margot. I can't just turn her away." Margot's laugh was brittle. "You're not running a charity. Or is this about something else? Because I see the way you look at her." Eleanor's chest tightened. She wanted to deny it, to say it was just compassion. But the truth was a knot she couldn't untangle. She cared about Clara. More than she should, more than was safe. Choose, Margot said, her voice low and dangerous. Her or me? Eleanor froze, the ultimatum hanging like a guillotine. She loved Margot. They'd built a life together, a partnership of 10 years unshakable, or so she'd thought. But Clara was a spark in a world Eleanor hadn't realized had grown dim. I need time, Eleanor whispered. Margot's face hardened. You don't get time. You choose now. Eleanor's heart pounded as she stood in the bedroom, Margot's ultimatum echoing in her ears. The weight of it was suffocating. 10 years with Margot, a life of shared dreams and quiet mornings, pitted against the inexplicable pull she felt toward Clara. She didn't understand it herself, this ache that bloomed when Clara laughed, or when their hands brushed while passing a coffee mug. I can't choose right now, Eleanor said, her voice trembling. This isn't fair, Margot. Fair? Margot's eyes flashed. You brought her into our home. You're the one making this complicated. Eleanor wanted to argue, to explain that it wasn't about betrayal but about humanity, but the words stuck in her throat, because deep down, she knew it wasn't just compassion driving her. She turned and left the bedroom, needing air, needing space. Clara was in the living room, lacing up her boots, her backpack slung over one shoulder. I'm out, she said, not meeting Eleanor's eyes. I heard enough. I'm not wrecking your marriage. You're not, Eleanor said, stepping closer. This isn't your fault. Clara's laugh was sharp, bitter. Yeah, right. Rich lady takes pity on the street rat, and now her perfect life's falling apart. I've seen this movie. I don't stick around for the credits. Eleanor grabbed her arm, gentle but firm. You're not a street rat. And I'm not letting you go back to that. Clara's blue eyes searched hers, raw and unguarded for a moment. Why do you care so much? You don't even know me. I want to, Eleanor admitted, the words spilling out before she could stop them. I want to know you. The silence that followed was electric, heavy with unspoken truths. Clara's breath hitched, and for a moment, Eleanor thought she might stay. But then Clara pulled away, her expression shuddering. You've got a wife, Eleanor. Figure that out first. She was gone before Eleanor could respond, the door clicking shut behind her. The apartment felt emptier than it ever had, even with Margot still there. The next morning, Eleanor woke to a cold bed. Margot was already up, her suitcase packed by the door. I'm staying at a hotel, she said, her tone clipped. You clearly need to sort out whatever this is. I won't be your second choice. Margot, please, Eleanor started, but Margot raised a hand. Don't. Just don't. She left without another word. Eleanor spent the day in a haze, her mind replaying every moment with Clara. Her sharp wit, her quiet vulnerability, the way she painted a sunset on a napkin at the diner, her hands steady despite everything. By afternoon, Eleanor was back on the streets, searching for her. She checked the corner where they'd met, the diner, the shelters. Nothing. Days turned into a week. Eleanor's life unraveled quietly. Her work suffered, her calls to Margot went unanswered, and the penthouse felt like a mausoleum. Then on a rainy evening she found Clara in an alley behind a coffee shop, sketching on a piece of cardboard with a stolen pencil. You're relentless, Clara said, not looking up. You're worth it, Eleanor replied, crouching beside her. The sketch was of a woman, Eleanor, she realized with a jolt. Her features softened in pencil strokes. Clara's hand stilled. You shouldn't be here. Your wife isn't here, Eleanor said. And I'm not giving up on you. Clara's eyes met hers, and for the first time Eleanor saw fear there. Not of the streets but of something deeper. You don't get it, Clara whispered. I'm broken, Eleanor. I've got nothing to give you. You're enough, Eleanor said, her voice fierce. Just as you are. They sat in the rain, the world blurring around them. Clara didn't say yes, but she didn't say no either. When Eleanor offered her hand, Clara took it, her fingers trembling. Back at the penthouse, things were different this time. Clara didn't sleep in the guest room. They talked until dawn, Clara's walls crumbling as she shared fragments of her past. A mother who'd left, a system that had failed her, a lover who'd broken her heart. Eleanor listened, her own heart breaking and mending with every word. But Margot's absence loomed. Eleanor knew she couldn't avoid the choice forever. She loved Margot, Or at least the life they built. But Clara was something else, something wild and real. Something that made Eleanor feel alive in a way she hadn't in years. The days with Clara were a quiet revolution. Eleanor taught her how to use the espresso machine. Clara taught Eleanor how to see beauty in cracked sidewalks and fleeting glances. They painted together one afternoon, Clara's hands steady as she guided Eleanor's brush across a canvas, their laughter filling the penthouse. It was reckless, intoxicating, and terrifying. But Margot's shadow never left. Her texts were curt, her calls rare. When she finally returned, it was unannounced, her key turning in the lock as Eleanor and Clara sat on the couch, Clara's head resting on Eleanor's shoulder. Really? Margot's voice cut through the moment like a blade. Clara stiffened, pulling away. Margot, Eleanor started, but Margot's gaze was fixed on Clara. You're still here, Margot said, her tone venomous. Comfortable, aren't you? Clara stood, her jaw tight. I didn't ask for this. You two need to sort your shit out. Clara, wait, Eleanor pleaded. But Clara was already grabbing her backpack, her movements sharp and practiced. Let her go, Margot said, her voice low. This ends now, Eleanor. Her or me? Eleanor's heart stopped. She looked at Clara, her blue eyes burning with hurt and defiance, then at Margot, her face a mask of controlled fury. The choice was a blade, and no matter which way she turned, it would cut. I can't lose you, Eleanor said to Margot, her voice breaking. But I can't abandon her either. Margot's laugh was hollow. You don't get to have both. You think you're saving her? You're just chasing a feeling, Eleanor. And it's going to destroy us. Clara was at the door now, her hand on the knob. I'm not your project, she said, her voice raw. I'm not staying where I'm not wanted. You are wanted, Eleanor said, stepping toward her. Clara, please. But Clara was gone, the door slamming behind her. Eleanor turned to Margot, tears stinging her eyes. Why can't you see this isn't about choosing one of you over the other? It's about doing what's right. What's right? Margot snapped. You're throwing away our marriage for a stranger. You're not a hero, Eleanor. You're selfish. The fight stretched into the night, words like shrapnel tearing through their carefully built life. Margot left again, this time for her sister's house in Portland. Eleanor was alone, the penthouse echoing with the ghosts of both women. She threw herself into finding Clara, scouring the city with a desperation that scared her. She found her 3 days later, sitting on a park bench sketching the skyline. You need to stop this, Clara said, not looking up. You're married. Go fix that. I don't know if I can, Eleanor admitted, sitting beside her. I don't know what I'm doing anymore, Clara. But I know I can't let you go. Clara's pencil snapped in her hand. You're gonna lose everything, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. For what? Me? I'm not worth it. You are, Eleanor said fiercely. You're worth everything. They didn't kiss, didn't touch. They just sat there, the weight of the world between them, as the city moved on around them. Eleanor knew she was standing on a precipice, and one wrong step could cost her everything. Eleanor spent the next week trying to salvage her marriage. She called Margot, wrote letters, even drove to Portland to talk. But Margot was unrelenting. You've made your choice, she said, her voice cold over the phone. You just don't want to admit it. Eleanor couldn't argue. Every night she dreamed of Clara. Her laugh, her fire. The way she saw the world through a lens of hard-won hope. She kept searching for her, leaving messages at shelters, asking around the diner. When she finally found Clara again, it was at an art supply store. Of all places, Clara's fingers lingering over a set of paints she couldn't afford. You shouldn't be here, Clara said, but her voice lacked conviction. I bought these for you, Eleanor said, holding out the paints. I want you to have something that's yours. Clara's eyes softened, but she shook her head. You can't fix me with gifts, Eleanor. I'm not trying to fix you, Eleanor said. I see you, Clara. And I can't stop seeing you. They ended up at a small gallery nearby, Clara clutching the paints like a lifeline. She talked about the art on the walls, her voice alive with passion, and Eleanor realized she was falling. Not just for Clara, but for the world she opened up, one where beauty existed in the cracks and margins. That night, they went back to the penthouse. Clara hesitated at the door, but Eleanor's gentle stay was enough. They cooked together, laughed, and when Clara's hand brushed Eleanor's, neither pulled away. It wasn't a kiss, not yet, but it was a promise. Margot came home the next morning. She didn't knock, didn't announce herself. She found Eleanor and Clara in the kitchen, Clara's hand still on Eleanor's, and the air turned to ice. "This is it then," Margot said, her voice shaking with rage and pain. "You've chosen her." "Margot, Eleanor started, but Margot cut her off. "Don't lie to me. Don't you dare." She grabbed her coat, her eyes wet. "I'm done, Eleanor. I'm filing for divorce." The word hit like a punch. Eleanor stood frozen as Margot stormed out, the door slamming with a finality that echoed in her bones. Clara was silent, her face pale. "I'm sorry," Clara whispered. "I didn't mean to." "Don't," Eleanor said, her voice breaking. "This isn't your fault. It's mine." They sat in silence, the weight of the choice settling over them. Eleanor had lost her wife, her life, everything she'd built. But Clara was still there, her presence a quiet anchor in the storm. "I should go," Clara said, but she didn't move. "No," Eleanor said, taking her hand. "Stay. Please." And Clara did. The divorce was a slow, painful unraveling. Margot moved out, taking half the furniture and all the certainty Eleanor had once known. The penthouse felt too big, too empty, but Clara stayed, her presence filling the spaces Margot left behind. They didn't rush into anything. No grand declarations, no reckless promises. Instead, they built something new piece by piece. Clara started painting again, her canvases filling the apartment with color. Eleanor helped her enroll in community art classes, then a gallery show. Clara's first piece sold for $500, and she cried in Eleanor's arms that night, not out of sadness but something closer to hope. They fought too. Clara's pride clashed with Eleanor's need to help, and old wounds made trust a fragile thing. But they talked through it, learned each other's rhythms, found a balance between independence and reliance. Eleanor learned to listen without fixing, and Clara learned to accept kindness without suspicion. One evening, 6 months later, they stood on the balcony, the city sparkling below. Clara leaned against the railing, her auburn hair catching the light. "You gave up everything for me," she said quietly. "Do you regret it?" Eleanor thought of Margot, of the life she'd lost. There was grief there, a wound that might never fully heal. But then she looked at Clara, at the woman who'd taught her to see the world anew, who'd shown her that love could be messy and raw and still beautiful. "No," Eleanor said, taking Clara's hand. "I chose you, and I'd do it again." Clara's smile was small, but it lit up the night. They kissed, soft and sure, the city humming below them. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. There were still scars, still uncertainties, but it was real. And that was enough. Their story spread quietly through Clara's art, through whispers in Seattle's art scene. A millionaire and a homeless woman. An unlikely love that defied expectations. It wasn't about saving or being saved. It was about two people choosing each other, against all odds, and finding a home in the spaces between. Eleanor didn't know what the future held. More fights, more healing, more love. But as she stood there, Clara's hand in hers, she knew she'd made the right choice. Not because it was easy, but because it was true. Thank you for listening. Like and subscribe to get notifications about next videos.